This episode of Bullet Heaven was made possible by Playism. If you haven't heard of Edelweiss, you'd better listen up. Already with a pretty fantastic development history, this doujin outfit could be the very best of their kind in the world. Their latest game, 2013's Astebreed, is a prime example of indie gaming done very, very right.
Following up the impressive Ether Vapor remaster, Astebreed is perhaps one of the finest independent shooting games ever produced, with production values that make the pros look like amateurs. Although it is kind of a hybrid in some ways, it's still a solid shooting game with some really neat features. Let's take a closer look.
Man, Astebreed sure is a refreshing change of pace. It's one of the few shooting games out there that features dynamic scrolling, changing from horizontal to vertical and even into the screen Star Fox style, seamlessly in different parts of the stage. On-the-fly vantage points like this are something not commonly seen in this genre, and it's certainly welcome here.
Controlling your mecha is pretty easy keeping this in mind. In the end, it's all 8-way control at its core, so even in the 3D scrolling parts, moving out of the way is as natural as it would be during a 2D scrolling section. Meanwhile, you'll be facing off against insanely huge swarms of enemies that appear in a 2.5D fashion that has players contending with opposition on several planes and directions.
No worries though, because the Crossbreed mech has a few sweet tricks up its sleeve. Sure, firing away with either scattershots or linear fire with the Lucas system will do the job, but locking your fire onto enemies using two different lock styles is much more effective. Holding the linear fire button locks on with a narrow cone at a super fast rate, while holding the spread fire button creates a circular field in which all enemies within are locked at a slower rate. Releasing the fire button unleashes a swarm of unholy homing death that instantly kills off popcorn enemies and chips away at your foes while you swoop in for the kill with a giant freaking sword.
Never mind that your sword can also wipe away basic enemy bullets in a furious, whirling frenzy. You can also take out chains of enemies while holding the sword button and direction of your choice. The sword deals some pretty heavy damage, and it will be the key to swift boss kills in conjunction with some heavy lock on fire. Lucas Fire can also cancel out purple enemy shots, so knowing when to use specific attacks at the right time is important.
But that's not the end of the Crossbreed's arsenal. There is a gauge under your mecha that will fill gradually as you blast along through the stage. When the Crossbreed begins to glow after this yellow gauge is full, super abilities known as EX attacks can be engaged and vary depending on your lock condition. When nothing is locked, heavy damage will be inflicted to anything within a specific radius while engaging a shield. Locking onto several enemies creates an EX dash attack, and full lock on a single enemy will engage a spinning tornado of death.
The Crossbreed also has a shield for protection. The shield will replenish in time as long as no attacks are fired, but once you reach 0, it's game over. While the shield is rather forgiving, there is also no life stock, so care should be taken if you're hit too hard, too quickly. Thankfully, you won't be damaged with simple contact with your enemies. Getting hit also reduces the tension gauge, which affects scoring. More on that later.
There's a lot of emphasis on locking on and dashing in with your sword, so there's quite a bit of a brawler feel to Astebreed in conjunction with its shoot-'em-up core, making it quite an interesting hybrid. Awesome mechanics and great control certainly make Astebreed a fantastic piece gameplay-wise, and it's made even better thanks to its amazing optimization. This game runs on lower spec machines at full graphics settings in 720p without a hitch. Higher resolutions, especially 4K, will need a bit more oomph, but with everything running so smoothly at 60 FPS for us, it's a pretty easy sell.
Between Astebreed's 7 stages counting the prologue, multiple difficulty levels, and the nice length each stage has, there's quite a balanced amount of gameplay here, and it's only made better thanks to a solid scoring system.
Scoring high in Astebreed depends highly on getting your tension gauge to its maximum and then taking out enemies with your sword attack. So long as you're not taking any damage, the gauge will increase to a multiplier maximum of 16. If your sword or EX attack makes contact with any enemy regardless of whether the gauge is full or not, the current multiplier will be applied.
Simply getting the multiplier up isn't quite enough though, since the gauge will deplete as your tension is relieved through these attacks. Finding a rhythm and building the tension multiplier and using the most optimal sword dash or EX attack is critical in getting monster scores. You can get a faster tension build by cancelling bullets with the Lucas shot or your sword respectively.
There are additional bonuses for taking out bosses as fast as possible as well, and the tension bonuses will also apply for popcorn enemies that they may spawn. Using EX attacks also helps in much faster boss destruction.
The stage hint result will show your time bonus as well as the chapter and overall score progress. It also displays your previous records and how your current score stacks up, which is a really nice touch.
All of this is what you want to take into consideration when attempting to place high on the worldwide online leaderboards. All in all, the scoring is fun and adds a competitive layer to Astebreed for score chasers everywhere.
君のことは信用している。あの時もそうだった。同じ連合軍の手によってリタアクシスは落とされた。そんな、あれを入れんが。火は知らない。競技者の連中は実戦監督を送り。
Oh, you want a good presentation, do you? Well, Astebreed just so happens to be a game that has one of the best presentations we have ever seen, bar none.
Take the visuals, for example. Look at this game. It's not a far stretch to say that these are easily the very best visuals we have seen in a shooting game. There are some wicked cool looking games out there to be sure, but Astebreed has a slick, shiny style that begs to be gawked at 100% of the time.
The visuals here are really kind of unbelievable at times, with some jaw-dropping environments and beautiful lighting and visual effects that are just pure bliss to look at. And to have it all at 60 frames per second even on a modest PC system, it's just fantastic. We also tested our machine with a dual-core AMD processor rated at 2.8 GHz, 6 GB of RAM, and a Radeon Sapphire R7 250 GPU at full-spec graphics, and it ran solidly at 30 frames per second at 1440p. 1080p runs like a dream.
The visuals are one thing, but the sound is another altogether. Amazing sound effects, great voice acting, and a splendid OST make Astebreed just as great to listen to as it is to look at. All of the voiceovers have also been translated as well, though they're a little out of the way when it comes down to reading them mid-chaos. Still a great touch.
Even the story is well thought out. The added prologue stage, which plays when you first boot up the game, adds just the right amount of backstory to the events that transpire in Astebreed. It never really comes off as hackneyed, nor does it really weigh the game down. And the art produced for the story scenes is pretty good stuff. There are even unlockable galleries of production art and story scenes which have already been seen when certain conditions are met in the game.
So, on the whole, Astebreed is just one hell of an amazing game on its own, much less an indie-developed title which, when you look at, hear, and play the end result is simply astounding. But how does it stack up? Let's take a look.
The controls in Astebreed are spot on, no matter the vantage point.
Seamless control between vertical, horizontal, and 3D flying is flawless.
Astebreed has multiple difficulties which are sure to please fans looking for a challenge.
The easier settings are great for novices as well.
With a total of 7 stages, there's plenty to play here.
The online leaderboards add a layer of replayability for score chasers.
Astebreed has hands down the best visuals ever seen in a shooting game. No contest.
The mechanical design and art produced for the story scenes is also a cut above.
The OST in Astebreed rocks, perfect for every action-packed scene.
The sound effects and voiceovers are also spot on.
With dynamic scrolling, an involved fluctuating scoring system emphasizing risk-reward and pure skill, and a beat-em-up infusion to add to the shooties, Astebreed stands alone as one of the finest STGs to date.
Not many games can pull off the kind of gameplay that Astebreed does, and so far, none have this level of polish.
Astebreed is a frontrunner for Best Shooter of the Year. Its mind-blowing production values and slick gameplay is certain to withstand the tests of time, and should be on everyone's PC hard drive that can support it, no excuses. Astebreed gets a 5 out of 5. You can get Astebreed on Playism and Steam for less than $20. Don't miss it.
So, on the whole, Astebreed is just one hell of a butler.